Hello, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. My name is Megan Rianne. I am a young adult author writing diverse stories about characters trying their best, and I'm very excited to share some brainstorming tips with you today. This is going to be a guide to help you jumpstart your brainstorming process, whether you are trying to expand an idea that you've just recently had, or you're trying to come up with a new idea for another novel, or even if you're in the middle of the drafting or revision process and you're not really sure what's supposed to happen next with your plot. And on the note of plot, before I scare away everybody who's a pantser or somebody who doesn't plan what happens in their novels, this is not just a guide for plotters. This is, as I said, for anybody at any part in the writing process who's just kind of stumped, needs some inspiration, maybe needs some new direction for their story. I've divided this video into 3 parts. First, we're going to be going over some plot and story-centric ideas. Second, we're going to go over some character-centric ideas and questions. And lastly, I'm going to share some fun bonus content to supplement this video. So my first brainstorming tip or idea is to think big picture. A lot of times we can get into the nitty-gritty or sort of put on our blinders when in reality your character exists in the context of their larger world and that there are probably other things outside of their control, or maybe things that go along with who they are or where they are in life that are going to affect where they can go and how the plot can progress. So think about what are some social norms constraining them, what are, economic pressures, what are some emotional, physical, mental, outside forces that could be acting upon your character. And you'll notice that this does technically deal a lot with character, even though I've put it in the plot section, but honestly, your characters and your plot should be so closely intertwined that it's pretty difficult to separate the two. But I put this in plot because it's things to do in your world or outside of the character kind of pressing in on them. So my second tip is to plot backwards. This is a pretty tried and true tip. I did not come up with it. For example, say that your cast of characters needs to get into the castle to talk to the king. It means that they have to get into the castle. Well, how do you get into the castle? Okay, there are only 3 different ways. There are 3 different points of entry. Okay, which of those points of entry are they going to take? And if they take this point of entry, why did they choose that? And sort of going back and back and back until you get to your starting point. This can be really helpful because it can help your plot feel cohesive, like intentional dominoes are falling and things are happening in a specific order for specific reasons. And it works very well for people who already have an end goal in mind. The final plot-centric tip that I have for you is my personal favorite. It's something that I use all the time and that I love, and that is creating a trope wish list. The name is a bit misleading. I would love for you to include more than just tropes on this list. I want you to think about, character archetypes, certain settings, certain types of, dialogue, certain character dynamics that you love, all sorts of things that you love to consume in media, even beyond just books. For example, my list includes tropes like I love found family, I love fake dating, but I also have circuses on that list. And for whatever reason, I love magicians who are fakes, but they fool everybody and nobody knows if they're fake or real. And from that list, try to see how many of those aspects you can pull into your own story. Not only is this really fun, but it helps you stay engaged while writing, because if you're writing something that you love, it's going to make the writing process that much easier and enjoyable. Moving on to character-centric ideas, questions, prompts, whatever you want to call these, I encourage you to consider your character's fears. Fears are so interesting to explore and can create tension and motivation. And oftentimes when you identify a character's fear, that's gonna be kind of your pointer of, on page, you're gonna have to make them face that fear and deal with the fallout from that fear. So a strong example of how fear is used in media is the movie Frozen. Almost as soon as we're introduced to Elsa, we see her hurt her sister with her magic powers, and then go into a life of isolation. And she has this internalized fear of herself and her own power and how she could hurt the people that she loves. So what does Disney do? As soon as Elsa is in public for any amount of time, for the first time ever, she hurts people with her magic, and she's forced to face that fear and deal with it for the rest of the movie. And it really drives the plot forward and the theme in that film. Alongside fears, I also encourage you to consider and dig deep into goals and motivations. These are often the basis of the story, since a proactive character makes an interesting and proactive story, though there are some caveats and exceptions to that. But I encourage you to have a motivation that is tangible. For example, if their internal motivation is they want to be liked and to be considered funny, that's great. Their external motivation and goal might be to win a stand-up comedy competition. And by having that external goal, you give your plot direction and you can start building out steps of how your character is progressing towards that. This also helps give your reader a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction as we see the character move closer or further away from that goal. For example, in Avatar: The Last Airbender, the TV show, when we first meet Zuko, his primary motivation is to restore his honor, and his goal is to capture the Avatar. And we can see at any point how close he is to achieving that goal and what steps he's taking to get closer to it. This next tip is to combat one of my big pet peeves. When you're reading a story or you're watching a show or what have you, and the characters are going down this really difficult path with some big obstacles, violence, or heartbreak, or all sorts of terrible things, but you're in the back of your mind thinking, okay, but why didn't they just take that easy path? I find romance tends to have this pitfall quite often, where it's like, we could have had the resolution in chapter 2 if two people had just had a conversation with each other. To avoid that, I encourage you to think about why your characters are taking this specific path toward their goal. Why do they believe that this is the easiest and best way to achieve what they want? Because characters, like people, want to do things the easiest and least painful way possible. And if in your thinking and your brainstorming you realize there's an easier path that they could take, but you don't want them to take that path, try finding a way to put a roadblock there, whether it's internal or external, but give the reader some indication of why your character is going this way rather than another way. And as you're blocking off those other paths you don't want them to take, you're narrowing your options and helping to refine what you want your story to become. This next tip ties very closely with desires, fears, motivations, and such for your character, and that is to dive into your character's pasts. Not only can a character's past influence all of those internal things that we've already discussed, but a character's past can bring in some tangible elements as well. Your character existed in this world, in this story, before the story began. Therefore, they might have past grudges or prejudices that they're dealing with. Do they avoid certain people or certain places because something happened? Do they have a friend from the past who can show up? One of my personal favorite tropes is like a sketchy contact from the past, because some characters like, oh, don't worry, I know a guy. So things like that, tangible things that your character can interact with or visit or avoid or what have you, because they've already existed in this space before page 1. All right, this one is one that I wish I could have given my past self. Try brainstorming and digging deeper into your villain and your antagonists. Maybe the reason that you're not able to fill out that beat sheet or you can't hit that word count that you're looking for is because you're making things too easy. A good remedy to this, of course, is introducing antagonists or villains or strengthening ones that you already have. Is there a way to up the power of your villain? Is there a way that they can be ahead of the game somehow? Even on top of that, is there another antagonist that you can introduce? Or is there an existing character, maybe an ally of the main character, who can have a goal or a motivation that conflicts? This can hopefully generate some more conflict and help your plot feel a little bit more fleshed out. And honestly, at the end of the day, more satisfying, because your characters will have overcome even greater odds in order to get where they end up. I really hope that these prompts were helpful to you and that they help inspire some fun new ideas for your novel, whether that's for plot or for character. As promised, I do have a bonus goodie for you. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you will get access to this awesome worksheet I created to go alongside this video. It includes extra prompts and writing space and questions to ask yourself as you're going through this brainstorming process. Like I said, to get access to it, all you have to do is subscribe to my newsletter. When you subscribe, you also get access to a bunch of other free goodies, as well as monthly updates from me on my writing and querying. I also tend to share a lot of book recommendations and other writing tips, so I'd love to have you. You can, of course, connect with me on Instagram at MeganRhianWrites. Feel free to shoot me a DM if you had any questions or ideas about this video or brainstorming. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.